Welcome back, Focus Learners. Today we are jumping straight into an absolute cultural milestone in the anime community. We're talking about the internet-breaking clash from solo leveling Sung Jinwoo versus the Ant King Beru. This wasn't just a cool action sequence, guys. It was a literal masterclass in animation and a massive turning point for the lore of the series. So we're going to reverse engineer exactly why this showdown went completely viral and what it means for the future of the story. Let's get right into it. 7. That is the number of years since a single anime fight uploaded to YouTube has pulled in this level of record-breaking views. 7 years! I mean, you literally have to go back to some of the most legendary legacy anime battles in history to find numbers even close to this. The sheer volume of fans tuning in, and honestly rewatching it over and over, proves this fight struck a massive chord. It wasn't just built up on empty hype, it was a flawlessly executed payoff. Okay, let's dive into this community quote, because it perfectly captures the flipped power dynamic that makes this fight so legendary. Think about it. In almost any other story, the terrifying monster is the big bad boss, right? But as that epic Sawano soundtrack starts swelling, the audience, and honestly the Ant King himself, suddenly realize that the true final boss of this island is actually Sung Jinwoo. It's just a totally exhilarating subversion of the classic underdog trope. Section 1. The Jeju Island Threat. Now, to fully appreciate that wild dynamic shift, we really need to understand the terrifying context of the Jeju Island raid. First, an S-rank gate bursts open on the island, mutating all the local ants into this completely unstoppable swarm. Then, the absolute best top-tier hunters from Korea and Japan are deployed and, well, they fail miserably. Just as all hope seems completely lost, the Ant Queen gives birth to her ultimate weapon, the Ant King. The situation is literally apocalyptic. That is, until Jinwoo finally arrives and turns a desperate struggle for survival into an absolute one-man massacre. Just to give you a sense of the sheer baseline power Jinwoo is dealing with here, let's talk about the Ant King's debut. He effortlessly annihilates Goto Ruji. And look, Goto wasn't just some random fighter. He was Japan's strongest hunter, the leader of the Draw Sword Guild. And he just gets wiped out in a single swipe. The Ant King is so unfathomably strong that he is actually annoyed by how weak his opponents are. It immediately cements him as the ultimate apex predator. Section 2. Crafting the perfect clash. So you've got an apex predator and an unstoppable shadow monarch colliding. How on earth do you bring that to life? Well, the animators didn't just draw some cool poses. They actually reverse-engineered real martial arts and cinematography to make the choreography feel totally grounded. They relied on core principles like power exchange, showing Jinwoo barely breaking a sweat to really build that dynamic tension. They timed the strikes to a musical rhythm, sort of like classic martial arts cinema. Every massive hit has a clear anticipation, wind-up, and follow-through. Plus, they strictly adhered to the 180-degree rule for spatial framing, which is exactly why you never lose track of the action, even when they're moving at lightning speed. But hey, the visuals are really only half the battle. What truly anchors this fight is the insanely visceral sound design. We're talking heavy, metallic sword impacts against hardened exoskeletons, bone-rattling smashes, and these lightning-fast wind swooshes when the characters are basically teleporting around the screen. These brutal sensory elements give the 2D animation such immense physical weight. It makes every single hit resonate right in your chest. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the specific digital compositing pipeline they used to create Jinwoo's searing, intimidating aura. First, the animators duplicate the character's mask layer, then they add a CC light sweep to get that really harsh edge lighting. After that, they apply an effect called turbulent displace, which gives the energy those organic rippling waves. And finally, they finish the whole thing off with a deep glow to make it literally radiate. It is a crazy, meticulous, multi-layered process just to make Jinwoo look like a walking god. And of course, to really sell the catastrophic force of their blows, they layered in some incredible environmental destruction effects. You've got expanding ground cracks, literal earthquake fissures tearing straight through the asphalt, massive dirt and debris bursts, and full-on crater formations. The animators are literally destroying the environment to show, rather than just tell, the sheer mind-bending kinetic energy of these two titans going head-to-head. Section 3. Blue to Purple Aura. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive lore significance behind the color shift in Jinwoo's shadows right after his monumental victory. If you remember, initially his shadows glowed blue. That was an artificial, system-controlled power created by the architect just to train up a vessel. But once Jinwoo unlocks his 100% true power, that aura shifts to deep purple. This is not just a cool stylistic choice, guys. It represents his actual ascent to the true Shadow Monarch, wielding divine authority over death and pure, unfiltered shadow energy.
Section 4. The Shadow Army Hierarchy.
With this true monarch power fully unlocked, Jinwoo now commands a highly complex, strategic legion of the undead. And it all starts with one iconic word: arise. This is his core shadow extraction command. It's the mechanic Jinwoo uses to essentially rip the souls from defeated enemies, turning them into fiercely loyal shadow soldiers. And the most terrifying part? They actually retain their past memories and can continue to level up and evolve right alongside him.
Now, as this army grows, it naturally organizes itself into a pretty rigorous hierarchy. At the base, you have your normal and elite grades. Think of them as the basic infantry and professional support, roughly C to B rank and power. Then you step up to Knight and Elite Knight grades, which are basically your A and S rank heavy hitters serving as the core force and independent commanders. But the true terrors, they sit at the very top. The Marshal grade completely surpasses human S rank hunters and acts as the vanguard. And finally, you have the Grand Marshal, possessing literal monarch-level power, who commands the entire legion right under Jinwoo.
At the absolute pinnacle of this structure, we have three top-tier powerhouses. First up is Bellion, the Grand Marshal. He is the ultimate combatant, inherited directly from the original monarch. Then there's our boy Igris, the elite knight and crimson-armored peerless swordsman we met super early on. And sitting right between them as a marshal is our newly resurrected Ant King, Beru. With his rapid healing and toxic strikes, Beru instantly becomes one of the absolute most essential figures in Jinwoo's entire army.
Section 5. Beru's Loyal Evolution.
Which brings us to Beru's incredibly profound character arc. We go from a mindless killer to a deeply devoted follower. Just look at the contrast between his two lives. As the Ant King, he was this ruthless, brutal force of nature, bred by the Queen for the sole purpose of wiping out humanity. But the second he's extracted as Shadow Beru, he undergoes this wild transformation. He becomes highly intelligent, fiercely loyal, and surprisingly, deeply emotional. I mean, he even shows pride and gets super jealous of the other shadows when they vie for Jinwoo's attention. It's amazing.
And there are a few unique traits that really set Beru apart from the standard mindless summons. First, he has autonomous strategic thinking, meaning he can actually adapt on the battlefield without Jinwoo having to micromanage him. He's also the very first shadow capable of direct, fluent verbal communication with his master. On top of that, he retains his terrifying gluttony magic, so he can still absorb the skills of whatever he consumes. Oh, and here's a fun little fact for you. Jinwoo actually named him Beru as a clever nod to Bernard Werber, the author who wrote the famous novel Empire of the Ants.
So, we've watched Beru transform from mankind's absolute greatest threat into Sung Jinwoo's most entertaining and arguably deadly right-hand man. But looking forward, with his immense power and his completely new emotional depth, how will Beru's role expand as the Shadow Monarch is forced to face even greater, apocalyptic threats from the universe? Because let's be real, the Jeju Island raid was just the opening battle of the true war. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, Focus Learners, and stay curious.